talk some Mets and get ready for opening day. We welcome to the show Keith Hernandez. And, of course, tune into SNY tonight, 4:30 p.m. for the premiere of Dr. K, a new documentary celebrating Doc Gooden's upcoming number retirement. I told you about this. I saw it. They did a tremendous job. Joe Krause was excellent with it. It's great must-watch for Mets fans. And then, again, tune in to SNY tomorrow as the Mets open the 2024 season versus the Milwaukee Brewers. Live coverage begins at 12 noon only on SNY, and Keith Hernandez will be there to get things started. Keith, how are you?
I am doing very good.
Are you excited about the Mets for opening day, Keith?
Oh, opening day is always special. I'm just glad that they called the game yesterday. Today would have been absolutely miserable. And so it should be a nice day tomorrow. A little chilly, but that's what you expect in late March, early April weather.
Keith, how you feeling about this team? I know they made the late addition of J.D. Martinez. Me personally, it made me feel better about going into the season. They talk about making the postseason. Do you believe this team is a legitimate postseason threat?
I think with all the wild cards, all the teams, last year, if you look, the teams that were, 500 or a little above 500 were fighting for spots on the last spot, or the last two spots in the wild card. Now, I think the Mets are better than that. I think that they're going to surprise a lot of people. I've liked their offense even without J.D., even before they acquired J.D. Martinez, and that's a definite boost for sure. And, it's all going to boil down to the pitching, and that's where it's at for every team. We've got some veteran pitchers in the starting rotation that are looking to bounce back. If they do, it'll be a lot of fun this summer. If they have a hard time, it could be dicey.
Yeah. Keith, I think even the teams that are lining up a legitimate World Series run, at least on paper, everybody's got questions. So the Mets are no different. They seem to have a lot of questions, but I want to get your thought on this. Like, you hear a lot, well, if Marte so-and-so, if McNeil goes back to the 310 hitter that he should be, or if Alvarez does this in year two, or if Severino bounces back, if Beatty hits at this level, there's a lot of variables. Which of those, or something I didn't identify, that people aren't sure about specifically to a player that you think will be answered very positively?
Every year there's question marks, and the people that are that write about it and the team, they're going to, Marte missed most of last year. He was an invaluable piece of that 101 win season 2 years ago. If he comes back to form, it's going to be a huge boost to the lineup. I think it'll lengthen the lineup. I like him in the 2-hole, but the Net would be able to drop Lindor down and kind of lengthen the lineup, which J.D. Martinez has already, with his addition, has lengthened the lineup. Mm-hmm. We got question marks with Beatty, for sure. He did not have a good season last year. But you know what? It took me 3 years to get my feet wet. I got sent down my rookie year. The next 2 years I got off the terrible starts, was benched. It took me 3 years to get it together. So I never like to draw conclusions on young players. So the talent's there. All 30 teams have the same questions, but I think the Mets have a lot of veterans and it's a good lineup. They're going to score runs.
Yep. We're talking, of course, Mets legend. That's Keith Hernandez, part of the SNY crew. Those guys are top notch. The SNY doc at 4:30 today about Dr. K, which is going to be sick. And then tomorrow, all day on SNY, Mets open up the season. The Brewers live coverage at 12 noon, only on SNY. I'm curious because I don't know where he profiles ultimately. I'm talking about Alvarez. I know he's going to be a stud. Is the event, when he hits his apex, whatever that is, Keith, is he a 2-hitter? Is he a 3 guy? Is he a 4 guy, a 5? What do you think ultimately is the best spot in the lineup for Alvarez?
Oh, he's a middle-of-the-order guy, in my opinion. It depends on who the other pieces are. I mean, if you've got Pete, if Pete's going to stick around, he's your 4-hitter. Martinez, he's a 1-year deal. But he's either a 5 or a 6 hitter in my book as he develops, and he's got to do it. It's a sophomore year. He really had an up and down year offensively. He had a one great month, and then he followed with a bad month, and he came back and had a good month, and he had a bad month. He kind of had an up and down year. He's got power. He hit over 20 home runs, and that is something that will open your eyes. The potential is there. Plus, I really, really like the way he threw in spring training. He threw out half the runners. There were 16, I think, attempted steals. He threw out 8. And the day that I called the game, he threw out 4 runners, and that was very impressive. And in today's game, with a rule change about pitchers throwing over, which I hope they'll get rid of. I hate that rule. I mean, last year I think it was an 86% percentage success rate throughout Major League Baseball. That's ridiculous. That can't happen.
What should it be, Keith? What number do you think it should be? Just so we know.
I think they can throw over anytime they want. No one's going to throw over 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. It's just unfair to have 3 times. And puts all the more emphasis on having a good, strong throwing catcher. But inevitably, the game hasn't changed. They steal off the pitchers. Even Lou Brock, who I played with, they steal off the pitchers. And now with this rule, it's even more in their favor. And it showed up last year with the success rate throughout Major League Baseball. I think that rule's got to go.
BT and Sal on the Fan. We're talking with Keith Hernandez here. Live coverage on SNY for the Mets. Start tomorrow at noon. You know, Keith, you mentioned Alvarez in the spring, and I was going to ask you about the rotation. Anything that they did in the spring, because they had an impressive spring almost to a man, does anything that they did in the spring make you feel better about them going into the season?
I would have loved to have gotten Jordan Montgomery, to be honest with you. He was out there. But maybe, he doesn't. I don't know what his feeling is. He played for the Yankees. He performed better in St. Louis and then Texas, of course, last year. He's a solid pitcher. I don't know. Some guys don't like New York or don't like to play in New York. I don't know if that's him, but he had his options, and I'm sure the Mets were interested in him. So it was interesting that he wound up. Where'd he go? He went to Arizona.
Yeah.
Arizona's really helped them. Along with getting the left-hander from Detroit, what's his last name, Rodriguez. I mean, that really went out and helped themselves made themselves a better team. So, answer to your question, I like Severino. Manaea they're all good gambles. They're 30 years old, and you think in terms of 30 years of age. Back in my day, you're 28 to 32 is your prime years. You're physically become a man, and you've got 4 good years before you start to diminish a little bit gradually after 32. So they're both 30. They should be right at the peak. So if they can get it back together, and Severino's got he's had some great years, and Manaea has always been a guy with great stuff that just hasn't been able to put it together. But these are the question marks going into the season for the Mets.
Yeah, and that's probably going to determine what they do. That's probably the biggest question mark. Talking to Keith Hernandez, BT and Sal on the Fan. So everybody knows Pete posts and Pete mashes, but Pete's going to try to do something this year that he hasn't had to really do yet, and that is perform with the burden of the contract hovering over him. Have you ever had – I know the money's so different, Keith, but – it's got to be relative on some level. Did you ever have that issue? And you think, Pete, is there a possibility that becomes a problem for him? That's a big mental juggle.
I think he'll be fine. I mean, Pete went through the worst month of his career last year. I forget whether it was July or June. He had his worst slump, and it was a month-long slump. And I was watching very carefully how he handled it. He was, a month-long slump that's a long time to be not feeling good at the plate and not performing. And he came out of it. So to me, that's a strength. He showed strength and resilience. He's a confident guy. Just look at his numbers. I mean, he's got a body of work now. He is a legitimate cleanup hitter, power hitter. To me, he's a modern-day Harmon Killebrew, who hit over 500 home runs and is a Hall of Famer. So I'm not worried about I don't think it's an extra burden. You have your agent handle that, and you just don't make it an issue during the season. You just say right away to the press, hey, I'm not talking about contract. I'm here to play ball and do the best I can this season. So we'll see what happens. I hope that he stays, but those aren't my decisions to make.
Keith, how's Haji doing ahead of opening day here?
Haji he's back in the back on the heated tiles in my master bathroom. He's doing great. April 10th, he'll be 21 and a half.
Wow, man.
21 and a half.
So he's been drinking for a while, last couple of months, Keith, is what you're saying.
He's a tough cat, I'll tell you that. He can't. He's got detached retinas. He's blind and he can't hear. He's deaf, but his blood work is great, and he's going strong, and he wants to live. He's happy.
That's awesome.
Wait, he's deaf and blind?
Yeah, he's 21 and a half almost.
Oh, jeez. All right, well, hopefully he hangs in there.
Maybe the Mets could win one of these years for him before it gets too late. Haji, come on, Haji, let's go. Give him something here.
You're going to be busy with the team, Keith. That's why I'm asking him. You get to spend the offseason with Haji, and now you're going to be traveling with the ball club, you know?
Well, it's always been that way. I've got someone that watches Haji when I'm gone. Comes over. He's fine.
Yep.
I just had to kind of not quarantine. I had to cordon him off. I can't let him roam the house because he can't see and he'll get lost and he might make a mistake on the floor.
Well, hopefully all is okay with Haji. And Keith, before we let you go, and let's remind everybody, coverage begins tomorrow, 12 noon, only on SNY, and also later on today, 4:30 p.m., the premiere of Dr. K, a new documentary celebrating Doc Gooden's upcoming number retirement. Also catch Baseball Night in New York following that, with yours truly hosting it. My partner here, Keith, is a big Don Mattingly fan. I, myself, am a Keith Hernandez fan. Keith or Donnie, which one, Keith?
Here we go.
Oh, it doesn't matter. You can't go wrong with either one. Donnie was a great player. It's just a shame that his back slowed him down because he would have had he had 9 Gold Gloves, and he probably would have surpassed me if his back didn't go sour on him. And he was just such a great player. And I was older than him. I mean, I was like 5 years older, I guess. So when he was in his prime, I was on the tail side of my career, the back side. But Don's just a great player. And then this is. You take your pick. You can't go wrong.
Well, I mean,
it's not an answer, though, Keith. We're fishing
Keith,
for an answer, buddy.
I would personally, and again, you could chime in, please do, but I would personally side with 11 Gold Gloves and a couple of hardware for the fingers as well. You know, Donnie doesn't have that.
Well,
he's such an idiot.
I would have liked to have played in the American League where there wasn't a pitcher hitting in the 9-hole, and there was an actual a professional batter in the 9-hole. That would have given me more RBI opportunities. Yep. And Yankee Stadium, that right center field.
Here we go.
Come on, you dirty bombs.
I would love that right field porch.
Yeah, but you know what, Keith? I know you would have, and you had to kind of swing, surgical like you would have made the adjustments to pull the ball more. But I'm sure Donnie would have benefited from that bouncy turf out there in St. Louis when you had all those triples back in the day. So it goes two ways here, Keith. You know.
Oh, he would have had a lot of triples. It was 386 in that ballpark in the gaps, and when I was in my early 20s, that I got a lot of triples. So
I know you did. I think didn't you lead the league in triples one year, like in '74?
No,
75?
I didn't, but I had double digits in triples.
Got it.
It would be fitting, Keith, and thank you so much for your time.
Awesome.
It's great to talk to you. A pleasure. We'll check out SNY's coverage again today, starting at 4:30 with Dr. K, the premiere of that. Then Baseball Night in New York, and then of course tomorrow, 12 noon, as the Mets open their season. But wouldn't it be fitting, Keith, to one day have you and Donnie go into the Hall of Fame together?
Oh, that would be spectacular. That would be just about wonderful. Man, New York would go crazy.
Oh, we would.
Cooperstown would be packed. And before I leave, I've seen the Doc Gooden documentary too, and it is fantastic. So all the folks listening, don't miss it. And I'm not just blowing smoke. It is just really wonderfully done.
That's awesome. So some new stuff, because we've all seen the highlight montage, but some different stuff this time.
It's just a lot of conversation with Doc. That's
nice.
Very touching, and Doc's a very real person.
Yep.
He's very honest and forthright. It's just really wonderful.
And,
awesome.
And how about Keith? Because I did see it as well. How about him saying, I never knew this, and maybe you did, being his teammate. I didn't know that Doc was hoping in a certain way to get Marty Barrett on base there so he could come into the game and have his moment because he felt like he let you guys down in the '86 World Series.
Yeah, he has that burden. I think he's being hard on himself. It was shocking when he got hit in the World Series, but you know what? He pitched great against Houston in the playoffs. He pitched fabulous, and we wouldn't have got there without him. I found it interesting that he said that his arm was done. It was dead. It didn't have any life on his fastball in the World Series. He was kind of spent. So I found that to be very interesting, that comment he made.
Well, Keith, listen, man, you guys, your booth is fantastic. You and Ronnie, you guys are obviously tight. Gary Cohen's as good as nuts and bolts play-by-player in the business. So looking forward to some great stuff in the booth.